Welcome back to the third and final trailer breakdown for Dragon Ball Super Broly. We are now only a week away from the limited premiere over in Japan, so it won't be too long before all the juicy details start spilling out of that as far as story goes. Hopefully, as far as animation goes, we get some details about some staff members, or at the very least, some descriptions about scenes, cause oh my god, we're 3 trailers in now and they haven't shown any of Naotoshi Shida's work. And this is someone who not only confirmed his presence on the film, but also said he was planning to do quite a bit. Whatever he's doing must be pretty spoilery and pretty damn spectacular. If you have any guesses as to what that might be, drop me a comment down below. It'd be very interesting to see if anyone gets that right. This trailer though, oh man, last night we did a live reaction stream and some light analysis, and while it started off with a little bit of hype, Jesus fucking Christ! What? Dude, that was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. It somehow slowly devolved into the most intense shitposting after arguing whether Broly's hand looked like an alligator or a turtle. Thankfully this video exists, and we're going to take a more intense look at this trailer, so let's dive right in, kicking things off with a little bit of story analysis. I noticed the first shot of this trailer shows the ice landscape erupting in fire, so I kind of suspect that's probably how we transform from this icy world into the lava area we've seen several times. This moves into what is probably the weakest shot in the trailer for me, so at least it's all uphill from here, but this CG in particular just feels a little unpolished compared to some of the later stuff. The debris and lighting all feels very video gamey and doesn't blend as well as the other CG sections do. It does, however, blend very seamlessly into the hand-drawn close-up. Swapping between the 3D model and the drawing doesn't present much of a difference, so I do have to commend the character modelers for doing a good job of matching the sheets. We're definitely a world away from the last movie at the very least. Next we have some Takahashi Super Saiyan God Vegeta, and this really makes me so much more comfortable about his work going into this film. Of course, last trailer I mentioned that while I do love Takahashi to pieces, his style feels very at odds with the visual overhaul that's gone into this movie. However, seeing shots like this Vegeta really puts those fears to bed to an extent. It's certainly not 100% in line with the character sheets, but it's a much simpler approach from him, with what is largely only 2-tone shading. It feels like it respects Shintani's design sheets while also maintaining his style, and that's what I love to see. The next shot of Broly, however, is the total antithesis of this. It's spectacularly detailed and covered in the incredibly intense shading Takahashi is known for. Once again, I'm okay with these types of shots looking like this. Big stylistic changes are a great way to get the audience to sit up and pay attention, and with something like this, it's almost 100% justified. I really love how this looks, and I wasn't the only one. Masaki Sato, a huge Dragon Ball Z animator, the very person who animated Goku's first ever Super Saiyan transformation, took to Twitter to compliment this shot. He said it really shocked him. When he animated the original Super Saiyan transformation, he said that while he loved the manga's approach, it wasn't really realistic to include an on-screen snap sound effect as it appears in that manga. So instead, he chose to interpret that level of anger towards Frieza in the form of really intense veins all over Goku's face. He said he was so happy to see that make a return to Dragon Ball. For context, Sato is one of the many professional animators who condemned the modern Yamamuro era of Dragon Ball, so this film has won over yet another person who is beginning to lose faith in the series' visuals. That's a pretty big deal in my mind. Next up, we have a very interesting shot of Frieza blowing up Planet Vegeta. We did see this in trailer 2, but it looked very, very different. Originally, Frieza had no armor on, his color palette was incredibly different, he had no lines on his arms either. This directly contradicted what we saw in the manga, and likely due to fans pointing out the error, they realized their mistake and went back and fixed up the continuity. This actually isn't the first time this has happened. Back when Battle of Gods trailers were coming out, there was a shot of Gohan taking on Beerus, and he rushed at him in his Super Saiyan form. Fans all over the internet were like, wait, why would he not use his ultimate form? And so for the final film, they went back and fixed that. Likewise, in Toriyama's original script for Resurrection F, there was an error where Frieza recognized Bulma despite never seeing her on Planet Namek, and that was of course amended for the finished script. Back to the Frieza shot, they also likewise improved the compositing. The lighting is a whole lot more realistic based on the ball above him, so there's always the chance that the shot just wasn't quite finished and hadn't been looked over by a supervisor. Moving on, we get quite a familiar shot of Goku looking up at Broly on top of the mountain. This is pretty much an improved version of the teaser that Nagamine boarded about 8 or 9 months ago now, and in fact, you can see they reused some of Ryo Onishie's animation from that teaser. You guys know how much I enjoyed his work there, so if that makes its way into the film, I will be a very happy bunny. We also see one of the coolest bits of storyboarding in this part. It's such a dramatic angle and strong pose of Goku as his coat flies off. I was saying on the stream yesterday that you could literally extend that background upwards, add a logo, and you'd have one hell of a movie poster. I think each and every trailer has just sold me more and more on Nagamine's skill as a director, and considering every single early impression from the staff screening the other week heavily complemented the film's visuals, it sounds like the final product is just absurdly well executed. The next shot shows a super detailed close-up of Broly launching his mouth beam. Again, I feel the same as the earlier one. If it's a close-up that's trying to draw attention to something, I'm 100% okay with it moving away from the model sheets. This then leads into the meat of the trailer. We have what looks like Ryo Onishie's cool effects as the top of the mountain explodes. We've got some incredible impact frames and spiky effects work as Broly powers up. I think I mentioned this a little bit in trailer 1, but I really do appreciate that despite the fact the effects work is heavily processed, in that it's covered in this digital glow, it doesn't mask the animator's interesting shapes. You can see there's a strong yellow outline defining those shapes, and the glow just blends around that. The compositing on this film is such a dramatic improvement over the Super TV show. You can see the auras throughout this trailer never destroy the artwork underneath it like they did in Super. It's actually tasteful. The trailer takes us through part of Onishie's scene that we've seen before, but also includes a new section where Goku gets blasted into the sky. I love the scale of this scene. The way the camera pulls back as Broly's punch connects and the way the scene erupts with awesome effects is just amazing. Particularly the follow-through of Goku flying through the sky. That's one thing that's just a real common theme throughout this trailer. The scale of the battle looks colossal. Also, can we just take 1 second to appreciate Goku's eyebrow smears? Onishi is a madman. Anyway, we then move back into more Takahashi goodness. He's a pretty intense supervisor, so it's a little hard to tell what's a correction and what's his own key animation, but I get the feeling that Vegeta's punch here is probably his own doing. I love the foreshortening as he pulls his arm back and the way the camera flies in and out of the close-up of the punch making contact. It really emphasizes that blow. It's pretty classic, robust animation compared to some of the looser contemporary work on display from other animators, but I think it works really well. It's a little bit nostalgic. It's kind of interesting seeing Takahashi take 2 different approaches to Vegeta's surprised expression here. One has rounded eyes like the model sheets, while the other is more or less a Buu era approach. Both look great, but I thought it was kind of interesting to note, so just another little consistency concern that is worth thinking about. The next scene has Broly drive Goku through an ice wall in what is a pretty huge callback to what he did to Gohan in the original movie. This looks to me like Atsushi Nikaido's work corrected by Takahashi, and funnily enough, Nikaido did a similar cut in episode 100 of Super. The incredibly sharp line work really feels like his doing, and in fact, I've actually been sitting on Nikaido's inclusion in this film for a couple of months now. Takahashi revealed privately that both Atsushi Nikaido and Yuichi Kurosawa are on the film under his section, and their work really impressed him a lot. We never got to see Kurosawa at his full potential in Super, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he's brought to the table here. In the next scene, we have a close-up of Broly with a really realistic nose, and that really freaks me out, but I love the intensity the fisheye effect brings, and we move straight into one of my favourite sections of this trailer. Naokitate time! Frieza dashing at the camera looks so nice. It's our first time really getting to see Golden Frieza in motion since his design sheet was revealed. It's more or less in line with Toriyama's original design for that character, so you have the rounded eyes and softened shapes, and while he does look a little froggy on the sheet, that clearly hasn't impacted the film in any way. And once again, the awesome compositing work here means he actually looks golden once again. Just before we get to the main bulk of Tate's section, I do have to point out this little Piccolo shot that pops up in the middle. He actually has a defined nose again. We saw it on the character sheet, but after that shot in trailer 1, I worried it might just be too good to be true. But no, just like Z, he finally has his proper chunky nose back in action. Piccolo has been cursed with poor designs for so long now. I could not be happier to see him looking this good again. Right, time for my favorite section. Naoki Tate has one hell of a cool part in here that kicks off with Frieza dashing towards the camera. Art-wise, it's not only so nice to see him have time to actually polish up his work, but it's great to see his approach fit in seamlessly with the aesthetic of this film. Like I've said many times, he was born to work with these designs and it's really coming together nicely. The hand-to-hand section is packed full of his trademark smears that we saw all over the Universe Survival arc, but of course, unlike on the show where it felt a little bit rough, it's incredibly refined here, particularly in the close-up. I love that section where it goes all Looney Tunes and Broly's head kind of disappears inside his armor like a turtle. Tate hasn't been on anything since Super ended, so I think it's pretty safe to say he's going to be a huge part of this film. I cannot wait. Similarly, Onishi is also likely to be all over this film. We've seen so much of his work across these 3 trailers, and he's featured here yet again as Super Saiyan God Goku pulls his hands together to form something. I'm sure we'll know what that is soon, but for now we can at least say it looks damn good. This brings us into the most controversial section of the trailer. This is the big CG showcase, and it's divided a lot of people. Some people think it's fantastic and in line with the great work in Fighters, while others think it's totally hideous, out of date, and might just ruin the film for them. Personally, I'm somewhere in the middle. I think the models themselves look very, very good, as I did mention earlier. There's a shot here of Broly flying into the camera that's beautifully rendered. Myself and Totally Not Mark were very impressed by the way the underside of the jaw is conveyed. I also think they do a very good job of blending this CG into the world. They're getting a lot of mileage out of rendering the line work in the same way the 2D sections of the movie do. At the same time, I don't really care much for the movement. It doesn't really use 2D animation techniques, instead opting to just lower the frame rate, which is a very common approach in anime CG. Likewise, it's being used in sections that to me don't justify CG. One of the main reasons to use it is for hugely complex scenes with crazy camera work. We see that with Broly chasing Goku and Vegeta, that's fine, I think that looks okay, but then we've got this mostly still sequence of them charging up and launching an attack, and that's also CG, and I don't think it needs to be. You can see 2D Onishi-esque effects in the impact frames and the beam itself, in spite of the horrible deep-fried meme-looking colours, so it's a strange combination that at the very least I wish had been drawn over. Again, I'm very 50-50 on the CG. I think it works in sequences like where the camera pulls back to reveal Broly's colossal attack. That's a fantastic layout, and I think the digital effects work adds a pretty unique look to what's happening. Again, a distinctive visual shift like that grabs your attention, and that can be very effective. I just hope there's not an over-reliance on CG in scenes that don't justify it. Lastly, to wrap up the trailer, we get a big reminder that old Broly is still very much alive and in the spirit of this film. This is of course a suited up reenactment of that original power-up scene from movie 8. It moves into a great bit of motion that I have to admit I thought was CG for a split second, just because of how consistent the muscle detail is from frame to frame within that 3D space. That takes an absurd amount of skill to pull off, and I really can't wait to see that section in full. But that is an abrupt end to the entire trailer. That is the last one. I'm sure we will get some TV spots here and there, but the marketing has been surprisingly secretive this time around, so although I'm sure we'll get all the plot details from the premiere screening next week, I can't imagine we'll see much more from this film until way later down the line. I'll be heading off to Tokyo on December 11th to catch the Japanese nationwide premiere of the film on the 14th, so do expect lots of cool coverage of the film, reviews, thoughts and whatnot. I'll try and capture some merchandise around the city, and if you're interested, then perhaps just a travel vlog showing what I get up to in general. Either way, I cannot wait. The next month is going to be so painful. This film looks absolutely insane, and absolutely everyone who has seen it so far has complimented its visuals. You know, as someone who covers mainly the visual side of Dragon Ball, that just makes me so excited. As always, be sure to rate this video if you enjoyed it, and let me know down below how you felt about the trailer. I apologize for some possible static noises you heard throughout this recording. My cable for my mic is starting to break, and I didn't have a replacement on hand, so hopefully it wasn't too distracting. Either way, thank you so much for watching. If you're new and you enjoyed this content and found it interesting, then be sure to subscribe for more of it. But as always, like I say, I'll catch you in the next video.